Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Ideas on Natural Education by Aaron Shanti. Jean-Jacques Rousseau was an 18th century French philosopher who focused on education. His most famous published piece of work is Emile, which tells the story of a boy being raised to manhood according to Rousseau's ideals of natural education. The book was very controversial for its time and emphasized Rousseau's belief on societal influence on a child's development and education. This piece also alluded to the idea that organized religion and government was not necessary for man. Because of these controversial stances, Rousseau and his work was condemned by the Paris Parliament and he was ultimately exiled. This theory of naturalism is formed off the idea that all humans are born good and will remain good if formed by nature. However, humans who are formed by society are susceptible to evil. Rousseau believed that education came from three sources: from nature, from men, and from things. These sources need to work together toward a common goal to achieve a well-educated person. Rousseau also believed that cities were not a good place to raise children because of the heavy societal influence. Instead, children should be raised close to nature. By following a natural education, a child will become social, moral, and rational. Natural education begins in infancy. During this time, physical strength is the main focus. Children must learn to use their physical powers, specifically their senses. The tutor or parent pays special attention to distinguishing between the child's real needs and their wants. The child would also be removed from societal influence. In childhood, Rousseau stresses the importance of children not learning habits, but rather following their human inclination. During this time, children are encouraged to play and use their own imaginations. Instead of being given instruction, children will learn through experience. Negative education is also emphasized during this time, which is the idea that a tutor should only intervene in a child's free play to remove obstacles which might hinder their play or to create circumstances favorable to it. Adolescence is known as the period of learning. However, the child does not learn in the traditional way. The child will learn when they are ready to learn, which can only be decided by the child themselves. The child also decides what they would like to learn based on their own interests. Books and instruction are not used. Rather, the child learns through experiences. For example, instead of a child reading about a science concept, the child will create an experiment with the help of their tutor. A child will enter the stage of adulthood at the age of 15. During this time, they will study the history of man and society. Through these studies, a child will learn morals and consciousness. Before now, the child was never taught morals. Instead, they were acting on the innate good of man. It isn't until now that the child is taught history, philosophy, and the arts. The child begins to enter society as a fully educated man, not as a citizen. So, how can natural education be applied in our classroom? First, let's look at what should not be applied in the classroom. It is important to note that when Rousseau developed this theory, he envisioned it only to be applied to men. He did not believe that men and women should be taught the same because women had to be taught how to be women. This is, of course, not acceptable in today's classrooms. Additionally, removing a child from society is unrealistic and may actually hinder a child's developmental process by not being exposed to social interaction. Now let's consider what we can apply to our teaching. We can allow our students to learn more through play and experience. These experiences give children real-life connections which will help them retain more complex information. We can also allow our students to make more decisions in their educational experience. We may not be able to let a child choose if they want to learn math today, but we could allow them to choose how they learn it. I also believe that we should allow students to be closer to nature. This could be done by having class outside, hosting field trips to local farms or parks, or bringing nature into the classroom. When you place a child in nature, you are giving them the freedom to explore the world through their own eyes. Lastly, though possibly controversial, it may be beneficial for teachers working with younger students to take a step back from academics in order to allow a child time for natural development. In this case, the teacher would have to be careful to allow this more natural approach while also maintaining grade level standards. A couple questions that I have for you is first, Rousseau's ideas for children to not learn habits and instead allow children to follow their own inclinations contradicts educational strategies to implement procedures in the classroom. How do you think we can allow students to follow their own inclination while also maintaining classroom structure through following procedures? Or can these two not exist together? And lastly, what aspects of natural education would you use in your classroom and how would you make sure your students are still learning grade level standards? Thank you very much, and these are my references.